another story of the feel of Sweethearts and Heroes presentation. We had sponsored Sweethearts in a local high school, and I went and watched that morning, and then quickly that afternoon I hopped in a car and went to I've gone to one baseball game in the last 10 years, went down Red Sox. And I sat up in the bleachers, wherever it was, out in, middle of the sea of people. Gal comes and sits next to me with her friend. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" "Good. Where are you from?" She said, "The same community of where you guys just presented."
Huh.
I said, "Oh, interesting. Do you have any children?" She said, "Yes." I said, "How old?" She said, "High school aged." And she looks at me and I've got this big giant smile on my face. And she said, "What's that about?" And I said, "Did anything happen at school today with your son?" And she immediately goes into the, "Oh my God, you're never going to believe it. My son, who never talks to me, couldn't stop talking about this presentation with this mixed martial art guy, this military guy with his dog."
Come on.
And she went on for 3 minutes just gushing on how the kid wouldn't stop talking about what happened today with a kid that almost never speaks to mom, not speaks, doesn't share what happens on a daily basis of what happens at that. And I've got this giant permagrin on my face with this lady. And she's like, "Why are you smiling like that?" And I said, "My bank sponsored that in your school today."
And this was at Fenway?
At Fenway Park.
Come on.
Probably 4 years ago. What are the odds, right?
I always say the greatest compliment I can ever receive. I've teachers, I left my career because of what a teacher said to me, what kids say to me. But truly, honestly, the greatest compliment I ever get, and I write back to parents and I say this to them all the time in messages. I say, this is the greatest compliment I can get. When a parent writes us and said, "My kid came home and told me about this," and we had a discussion about bullying and we had a discussion about humanity, and that's the greatest compliment I can ever get. When our message goes home with the kid, in the educational world, in their school, they take that message home and they connect with their parents over it and have real conversations over it. We have a very good friend of ours, a guy named Paul Harding, which I think I can mention because Paul's a huge, proud sponsor of what we do. And I can remember the table I was sitting at in a restaurant, and we had a conference call with, now Paul Harding is he wouldn't say this, but he's kind of a mega attorney in the Northeast. He's got a law firm up and down the East Coast or the New England area. And we had a conference call because we had some questions on some intellectual property stuff. I don't remember what the discussion was. You remember this discussion? I can remember where I was sitting at this table, and you weren't there. You were in your house, and I was at this restaurant. And I can remember Paul, it was a Saturday, and he connected us with his attorney. So if Paul Harding's a mega attorney, I've got to imagine that his attorney's really smart. And the guy was from Niskayuna, New York, his attorney. And so this was years ago. You can probably find out when this was. And Paul's attorney, you could hear him choking up on the phone. And he said, "My 11th grade, I won't forget it, my 11th grade son, who never talks to me, came home and we talked about your message. He said, I want to thank you." That was how he opened the conversation. And it was a guy that we would have never gotten on the phone. So, I mean, to me, man, that's just the greatest compliment I can get, we can get, is when parents connect with their kids, because there's nothing more important. I mean, honestly, Jay, what else is there more important in this world than the relationship between a parent and a child? I mean, you're going to look back, and I asked you earlier, I said, when do we assign meaning in life? And you said death, and that was kind of funny, and I was talking about the other end, and we assign meaning to our kids before they're born. But I mean, when you're on your deathbed, I mean, this is just generic, and people say this all the time. You don't think about work. You don't think about your house or your car. You think about what really matters. You think about your kids and your loved ones. I mean, why aren't we thinking about that every single day? I mean, that's where you hit them, is in the heart. And that's the only thing that really matters.
So I'll share one other story with you. As you know, I've called a few schools and have tried to make an introduction to see if they were interested in bringing Sweethearts and Heroes to there. I'm a believer. I've seen it. I know it. I feel it. I find it humorous to me when I do get through to a principal or assistant principal, and we have the discussion on what you offer and a little bit about the day, and then they agree to book you, and we schedule it, and in they go. And a few of them I've gone with you guys to the presentation, and we go and see the principal, and they greet us very politely and calmly, and they're going to perform down at the auditorium. It's down there to the left, and they're just kind of like, it's a nice day. Then they come in and they watch the presentation, and then on the way out, hey, what'd you think of it? And it's a completely different principal, and now they're all animated and excited, and they've got their hands up over their ears going, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing. When can you come back? And I just find that interesting as me as a marketer with the bank. I think maybe I'm not doing a good job of explaining the totality of what you guys offer, because the before principal and the after principal are two different principals. And I just find that amusing to me at the very least. So maybe if there are some people that are watching this, to don't be the before principal. Start with the oh my God principal at the beginning.
Yeah, that's quite often that happens. Unfortunately, I think somewhere in administrator school, principals learn that based on history, there's not a lot of power or impact in bringing a one-hit wonder. That's a theory or a philosophy that I think administrators are given at some point in their administrative training or postgraduate work. I disagree. I wouldn't classify our message as a one-hit wonder, but I do believe that in the one time or one day experience, and we call it a full day of value, which goes well beyond what a lot of other groups or presentations or messages will do in a day of value. But I think that that opportunity to meet someone like Rick Yarish, our other presenter and Wounded Warrior, or Tom Murphy, who's dressed in all pink with his nails painted, redefining masculinity and challenging stereotypes, and then delivering the most relevant information on any topic that exists inside the four walls of a school. That's kind of a sticky thing to remember. That's going to stick. On top of that, our information is backed with breakout sessions where we model social emotional learning experiences that can take place that the school can implement once we're gone, or we will model other elements of our empathy activation program. We have additional programming that can be taken advantage. We do K through 12. We have a year 2, a year 3, a year 4 then. Most buildings are cycling through and you start back over again with the parent presentations or the parent universities, staff development. We just did 2 weeks ago 3 different school districts, K through 12. So, unfortunately, a lot of times we're kind of classified as like a group or a one-hit wonder or one-time thing that comes in and does their thing and then leaves. And we blow them away when they experience that, but they had no idea that there was so much more. It's really like an iceberg situation. They just see the very tip of it, and they had no idea how massive the value really is under the surface.
I don't even worry about it anymore. I used to think I had to convince people, but I don't have to, and it's really easy for me to kind of bathe in this serotonin and be like, oh, I know what's going to happen, and I do. Oh man, there's just so much I could say about the whole philosophy of the one-hit wonder, and Malcolm Gladwell points out, I think that is very relevant, that all of us have this ignition that set us on certain courses. I mean, if you look at Viktor Frankl, and he talks about in Man's Search for Meaning, he says that meaning comes through 3 ways, and he says first level of meaning is through the works that we have and the, the arts and the things that we are attracted to and the effort that we put into things. And it's kind of level one of meaning, and you've developed some of your meaning that way. And then level two really comes from the events that we go to and the experiences that we have and the people that we meet. I mean, if you think about your own personal meaning with your being a husband and being a father, that's the people that you met. It's the experiences you've had. And I think we classify very deeply into both of those categories of meaning for young people and adults. I mean, I thought you were setting me up here because I just posted a message on Facebook last night. I just took a screen capture of someone's Twitter, and the guy wrote 16 years of teaching. If you haven't seen it on our Facebook feed, he says the most impactful day of 16 years of teaching. I just posted that last night because I just took a screenshot of it because, not to pat us on the back, but I want other teachers to understand that. But so there's like two levels of meaning, and certainly I won't get into this too deep, but, Viktor Frankl, couple times survivor of Auschwitz, and whether there's always some controversy around him. He says the greatest meaning in life comes through suffering. And I know that firsthand because I've watched this guy who 60% of his body was burned away in Iraq, my speaking partner, Rick, our speaking partner, Rick. The greatest meaning in his life came through the suffering that he went through. And I think that, and here, let me just tie this all together. I think that when you get kids that are watching that are really deeply into some suffering and some meaninglessness in their life, and some hopelessness, and you come in and you have this ignition that happens in front of them, and they kind of ties all three of those levels of meaning together for a kid. And how can you say that doesn't change someone's life? It doesn't change the world. Because honestly, we got to change one person's life in that auditorium to change the world. I tell kids all the time, they're like, well, you always say hashtag this will change the world. Well, there's no reality outside of the 6 inches between your ears. I mean, maybe we believe there is, but, Descartes, I think therefore I am. And some people always said, maybe this is just a dream and you're in my dream. So the way I frame it for a kid is, and an adult is, if we change the reality, the life of one person, I mean, we've changed reality, and that kid's going to go on and affect someone else. And how can that one-hit wonder not be amazing? So, I mean, I'm kind of rambling on about this because you have so many thoughts in my head, and I've had this battle and conversation in my own mind for years now, for almost a decade. But I know what kind of meaning it has for young people to get this message and to know that they can give hope to other people when there's nothing greater, and they can jump into action and possibly save someone's life.